Hey y'all, it's Sarah. I make videos about movies, running an online store. So shout out to y'all for watching my last video on me kind of going through my wardrobe and my movie review on Megan. I really appreciate the feedback. I don't know if you guys can tell, but I had my eyes dilated and my pupils are huge. They're like the size of peas. It's so weird, but they're very sensitive to light. So if I appear a little distracted, that's why. I rewatched one of my old faves, Fallen, starring the Denzel Washington, the John Goodman. Fallen is about a detective who had a career-breaking case where he captured a serial killer. At the beginning of the story, we're in the middle of nowhere, we're in the woods, it's wintertime, there's snow on the ground. We see the main character, the detective, lying on the ground, and then we hear his voice narrating. His first words to us are, "Let me tell you about the time I almost died." What? That right there sets the stage and lets you know that this is gonna be something that you've never seen before. And really, outside of maybe a few details here and there in other movies, it is a still, even now, even though it came out in the 90s, is a very unique neo-noir thriller with a supernatural twist. We're in like modern day city setting. It's at night. This is a high profile case, so there's extra added security. There's people like yelling stuff outside of the building. He's escorted in because this person wants to speak to him before his execution. Him and this serial killer have an odd conversation where he sort of insinuates that this is not the end, that he'll be back somehow. The detective, says goodbye to him, he leaves. Events from there proceed as you would expect them. He's walked from his cell down the hall to the chamber. But even that scene where he's being walked down the hallway, there's this song that starts up in the background, this upbeat, jazzy song, which is creepy and weird. And as he's walking down the hall, you see him looking at other prisoners in their cell, looking at guards, and the perspective shifts to show you what he's seeing, which is a slightly distorted, like grainy green version of the world. And you get the impression that there's something more that's going on here than we know. Things proceed. He's put into the chair in this chamber. He says something offensive to the crowd, and then they turn the gas on. He dies. And then you see the perspective shift so that it appears to be him looking down on himself, and then that perspective moving into one of the guards, and suddenly we are looking at what he's looking at. Quick, fast. First couple of minutes at the beginning of the movie, we understand that there's something supernatural going on. It's not overly stylized. There isn't like this huge backstory that comes in. It just is what it is. Essentially, it's this malevolent spirit that just goes around possessing people and committing acts of murder. And for some reason, at this point in time, is fixated on this detective. His major motivation is to kill and taunt the police with clues and words and symbols that they don't understand. So after the serial killer is put to death and he is dead, someone begins committing identical murders, which puts this detective back on the scent. The setup for this was so smooth and easy, which I really appreciate, because sometimes we don't need all that. We don't need like a backstory, that goes back eons, that explains X, Y, and Z. Sometimes we don't need that. Sometimes we want to be introduced to something as though this is just a thing that happens that people just are not aware of. It sort of reminded me of M. Night Shyamalan's movies towards the beginning of his career, movies like Lady in the Water, which I know it didn't do very well, but I like the story. A man who's a janitor working at an apartment complex who finds a water nymph or sprite or whatever you want to call her in their pool. Here, it's way darker, without gross, gratuitous violence, without gore. This is smart, well-organized, well-structured story with a great cast. Interesting characters, like the detective himself. He lives with his brother and his brother's son. They all live together, and his brother got something going on. Can't say what it is and cannot live independently, so his brother takes care of him. And just their interactions together as a family, doing everyday family things, makes his character and their characters feel so authentic and real. So we get to follow him throughout his days, him dealing with other detectives and his superiors and being drawn back into these murder cases. On the other side of things, we're also seeing this spirit as it moves through the world, what it does, possessing the bodies of certain people and then moving on. Not somehow, because it's very clear. This is another thing that I like, is this is really a crime thriller with a supernatural twist. So he's investigating, he's like interviewing people, following clues. Events are coming in that they are dealing with in a way that makes sense for their characters, moving forward constantly. You know, nobody knows languages that they should not feasibly know. Nobody has skills and abilities that just seem completely inauthentic to their character. This is like regular people dealing with something supernatural, not even realizing that until like halfway through the movie, which we'll get there. And that's another thing that I love, is that the story takes its time to unfold. It's not like, bam, here's the catalyst. Bam, here's the other catalyst. Here's the event that leads him to this other thing. It's like clues naturally come up, connections are made intuitively in a way that seems very natural, and then we're moving on to the next thing. So over time, as he's investigating these other murders, the killer leaves a clue for him that leads him to another old case where a previous detective who worked, I think, in the same department, and by investigating that case, it led him to some information which helped him identify what this thing, this spirit, this entity is. You guys have got to see it. So I know that I'm biased about this movie. It is one of my absolute solid faves, but I give this movie 5 out of 5. The story is interesting and unique. The characters are authentic. The storyline is solid. There are a few moments that make you go, not quite sure. But the next moment or the next scene or the next event or the next character sort of fill that in for you. It leaves you with questions unanswered, but not in a way that feels like purposeful. Like, I'm gonna throw this at you so that you have questions about it. It's much more like, what is gonna happen to these characters afterwards? Wanting to know what happens to them. What were the events that happened after the movie was over? Those are the questions that I had after watching it. And that's why I wanted to share it with you all, because it's very rare that I watch a movie and I'm so involved in the story and the characters that when the movie is over, I want to know what happened to them. I want there to be more. I really hope you guys give it a chance and watch it if you like crime thrillers, if you like supernatural thrillers. I think you would really like this movie. Like I said, there's no like karate chops, there's no blood sprays, but it is a very smart interpretation of the supernatural crime thriller. Thank you so much for spending your time here with me today. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you guys next time.